Well, good morning, everybody. I think the number of people arriving has slowed down anyway, but it's okay as they join as we get started. Um, get that out of there. James, can you hear me okay? I just want to make sure I do a sound check before I move on.
Yeah, no, we can hear you just fine, Bob.
Great. Okay, so this morning what we're going to do is kind of a live commissioning of an IntelliCom. We've done a number of webinars advertising all the features and functions and what have you, but I think it would be more valuable to give you an idea of, what is the process that you and your technicians will be going through, when you get this in the field and start commissioning it. So it will be live. I'm going to be moving screens around a bit, so be patient with me on that. But we're going to start right from the beginning, like it's a brand new account, and we need to get set up, and I'll show you the kind of interactions that happen throughout the process. So let me... Okay, so first thing, I will do a little bit of definition, although this is mostly going to be live screens, but I just want to get everybody a view of how we view IntelliCom and give you a picture in your mind. So with IntelliCom, there's a few things happening simultaneously. So certainly it's a central station communicator. So it communicates through our Potter IntelliCom.com cloud, which is a network operations center, or a NOC, and that NOC, just like many other communicators that are on the market, operates through the cloud, and it communicates to the central station, and it does a number of things with the central stations, making sure that the events get there and that they're acknowledged, and there's kind of a kiss off and all those different things that you would expect to happen with a central station. So that's one piece. And the other thing that the IntelliCom is doing is it's communicating with Potter IntelliView, which is the Potter cloud. And that's where all of our services are. And so that's where you get the push notifications. You can view not only on a browser, not only on an iOS or Android device, but you can also view all of your events on a web browser. So IntelliView is doing that. The other thing IntelliView is doing is it has a connection into your programming tool. Your Potter programming tool, and I think it was like with version 10, it might have been a year ago or so, that the programming tool went from like a blue to a red, and up in the upper right hand corner there's a login so that you can log your programming tool into IntelliView. And the reason for that was so that it could start working with IntelliCom, and that's where you do your remote programming. The panels are being backed up to the cloud, all your programming, and you could remotely make changes and send it back to the panel, so things like that. So that's why you see that in the programming tool. So that's kind of a high level of what the picture there. So the first thing that's going to happen is, and these are the steps we're going to go through today, of each thing, just getting IntelliCom set up, which is a one-time event, adding a central station, again, which is usually a one-time event for you, then programming the panel, registering the IntelliCom, and then getting an IntelliView account set up, and adding IntelliCom to IntelliView. So just a number of steps here. It looks like a lot of steps and a lot of confusion. It's not that bad. I'll try to get you through it. And the other thing I'll also, commit to you is that, when you're doing your first one or two, I am accessible to help. I've helped on a number of sites. And usually after you do that first one, you're like, oh, okay, this is pretty easy. I've got it now. But it's something that we're doing to make sure that people don't struggle with these or get, frustrated. Again, the first one's always, the challenge. So let's go through here. Okay, so before you start, we do want to make sure your panel's at a version 10.03 or higher, because that's the panel version that knows that an IntelliCom exists. Versions prior to version 10.03 don't even know that there's such thing as an IntelliCom, so it won't work. Also, your programming tool, just go to the latest release. I believe 10.395 is the latest, although we have had a number of releases over the last 6 months, and I know more are coming, mostly because there's a lot of new features being added to the panel, a lot of new devices, so just stay up to date with that. There are training videos that are substantially similar to what I'm discussing here. Some are on YouTube, the videos are on YouTube, and they're also on our Potter homepage and under training videos. So those videos are pretty good. They're like 2 minutes a piece, and I think there's 6 of them. I'll call them very YouTube-ish, 2 minutes, not highly edited. Matter of fact, it's me just kind of going through it and saying, here's how you get things started. So those are pretty good, or at least a good reference. In the box, there's a getting started guide. Possibly a little wordy, but it does have all the steps of a lot of the things that we're going through here. The only thing on the getting started guide that is not there right now and is being added is the how to program the panel, which seems like an obvious thing we should have kept in there, but it wasn't in the first version of the getting started guide. But I will be going over that today, and that is in the videos. If you can, don't power up the IntelliCom until instructed to do so. If you do power it up, nothing bad or horrible happens. It's just that you'll have to cycle power on it after you get all your programming done in Potter IntelliCom. So when I said, just go by the prescribed sequence and things will go well. Again, it's nothing you're not going to destroy anything. You just want to help you get started in a quick way. And so today we're going to really primarily discuss connecting to Potter panels because that's where all the strength in this Potter IntelliCom is, or IntelliCom. Now IntelliCom will connect just like anybody else's communicator through a DACT, but when you go through a DACT, you don't get all the services we'll be talking about, but it will operate like anybody else's communicator at that point. So we do have people using it that way, but I won't be talking about that as much. But yeah, standard tip and ring and all the things you're used to. Let me go here. So the first thing is you're going to need to create a PotterIntelliCom.com account. So let me go and bring this screen over. Okay, so you just go to www.potterintellicom.com and you'll come up with a screen like this. And what you're going to do here is you're going to say sign up. Okay, and so what we're really doing here is this product is currently only sold to our dedicated dealers. So really what we're doing is getting the information to set you up an account in IntelliCom, but also verifying that you're one of our IPA dealers. So you'll be putting in your name and address and all that kind of stuff. Let me see, I'll fill some stuff in here and see if I'll get you most of the way through it, and then I'll show you the screens that come up. So really nothing technical here to show you. We'll go to next steps. Your billing information, accepting the terms. You can view the terms there. Next step, and then just verify everything that you have here is correct, and really just say create dealer. And again, this is going to create you a PotterIntelliCom.com account. And I know one of the things that we're working on is, I know you have a lot of usernames and passwords, and we're working on trying to bring all of those together eventually, but right now they're not. So your PotterIntelliCom.com account is different, say, than your PotterLink account. Okay, so this will get you, once you did say create dealer, what will happen from there, and that's where I'll show you a screen grab. Okay, so we did that registration. You'll get something from us that looks a lot like this. It'll say account pending, and it'll have a dealer number, and basically it's saying here that typically in less than 24 hours you're going to get set up with an account. Now, if you did that, like say this morning, you're going to get it within an hour probably. If you did it Friday afternoon, then it might be a little bit longer. So yeah, during the day, if we see something come in, someone jumps on that within an hour. I don't know if I've ever seen it go longer than that. So that's usually pretty quick. Once you get this account pending, you'll get the account pending very quickly. And then within that hour or 24 hours, depending on the time you submit it, you'll end up getting another email from us with a username and password, a temporary username and password. And so that will get you into the account. So pretty basic there in terms of the things, you know, that you're used to with websites and getting accounts. Okay, so that's really all you do there. Now, once you get in, so I'm going to go into IntelliCom. So now assume I got my username and password, I log in. The next thing you're going to want to do is get a central station IP set up. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to log into my account. And so I did do a login, and you'll end up in a screen similar to this. And you'll see over here in the bottom right corner, actually the price list is over here. I think I could open that up. If you want to see the price list, this is the price list of the main units, some accessories, and then even the monthly charges for the cellular communication. So that is on that site. And central station IP setup. So this is the next form that you want to get to us. So we just need to know what central station you're using, and then we verify that we are compatible with that central station. And at this point, I'm going to say in 100% of the cases that have come in, we've been compatible with the central station. So it's usually, again, something that happens usually within an hour, if you did it right now. And again, Friday afternoon might be closer to 24 hours. Or even into Monday. So just be cognizant of that. But you go into the central station IP setup, and again, really what we want to know is who your central station is, who you are, and then that's your dealer number. And we sent that in the email, but it's also on the website itself, up in this right corner next to your name. I know that's very small, but that's your IntelliCom dealer number. So that's what we're looking for. If you can give us that, that's helpful to us. Because then we can, when we get this central station application, we know who it's for and we can align it. So real basic information on the left. On the right, this is where you're telling us about the IP receivers at your central station. So we just need to know the models that you'll be using, the IP address and the port numbers. Again, a lot of this will come from your central station. And if there's a backup receiver or another receiver there that you want to use, same information. We just need to know some information about that. The alarm format. Currently, when you're using the Potter panels, it's contact ID. If you're using a DAC, it could be SIA or DMP, but you'll be seeing from us sometime late in the first quarter into the second that we'll have SIA compatibility also when direct connecting to a Potter panel. So you put the alarm format, and then the DNIS. Again, this comes from your central station. It's usually a 4-digit number. We've had a lot of issues with this one, I'll say, for the most part, where people are submitting like all zeros. And although I believe that's a possible DNIS, in most cases it's not correct. And usually what happens is someone will call in and say, hey, I'm having trouble connecting to my central station, and then we start dealing with the central station and getting the correct DNIS. But so ask your central station for that. It's usually 4-digit for us is what we're looking for, a 4-digit number. And then your central station account code. So all just really central station stuff there. If we look here, that's basically what I'll cover in these videos. So you filled out the form, and then once we get the central station and we test it, we'll send an email back to you saying that the central station IP was added, and give you all the information. Basically, this is the information you submitted to us, with your IP information, your DNIS. That's why I kind of pointed that out. Make sure that we get that right, just because it just delays you. If you do get it wrong, not a problem. Don't submit another central station account form. Just get a hold of us, and we'll work with you to get that DNIS fixed so that it's correct. All right, so the next thing is to program the panel. So let me bring in the programming tool. So when you're programming your panel, you'll do it just as you always have. So do all, get all your points and stuff in there. Then the other thing you're going to want to do is under users, and this is really important. One of the users, we need a PC Connect unsupervised multi-user. And essentially, this acts as the password for the IntelliCom to connect to the panel. So I think in one of the forms, I actually use 9876. So I put 9876 in there and click PC Connect unsupervised multi-user. What I'll see in a lot of configurations, sometimes I'll see people use 1111. And as soon as I see that in your configuration, I'm almost certain it's wrong because that's a default and it isn't PC Connect unsupervised multi-user. So you do need to create one. And we've had many customers just use 9876 because I think it's maybe in one of our forms for setting it up. But yeah, definitely make sure you do that. And the other thing you're going to go to is IP reporting. And in your newest tools, you'll see that it used to just say add IP dialer. Now it says add IntelliCom. So you're just going to add an IntelliCom, put in here, what events you want to be reporting. And the other thing, this account ID is going to be going away because you're putting the account ID in potterintellicom.com anyway. So you don't need to fill this out. In the newer version, you'll see that go away. The configuration passwords, you can leave blank if you want to. The reason this was put in is if you wanted to put a password on the files that we back up to IntelliView. So like I was telling you before, we back up your fire panel. Anytime we see a change, we send it to IntelliView. Now, if you want those password protected, you can do so, and you configure that in the tool here. And this way, nobody can get in them that doesn't know the password. And we don't have a back door, so don't forget it. There's no way for us to get into it, and that's why we did it. We wanted to give customers assurance that nobody's getting your databases. You own them. We don't want them, and we're not looking at them. And if you want more confirmation, you could put a password on them. So that's all you really do in the panel is those two things, is to get the user code and IP reporting to add the IntelliCom. So James, do you have? I know I'm looking. I know.
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions. One of which I can definitely answer. The other of which I'd like you to answer. When Mark Sherman is asking, do we need 2 leading zeros on the DNIS? And to the best of my understanding, DNIS or DNIS is not inherently a 6-digit number, so you should not need the leading zeros, but correct me if I'm wrong on that, Bob.
I think that's right. I think they're all 4-digit is all the ones that I've seen. And I'm not an expert in that, but I believe all the ones I've seen are 4-digit.
Here's what I'm going to recommend. Ask your central station. If they tell you 001234, that's what I would put in. My guess is they would just tell you 1234. And like Bob said, if you have any issues with that, reach out and we'll get you in touch and we can make those adjustments and we'll work with you to make sure that everything is operating.
Yeah, you can reach out to me and I can get it changed. But yeah, it just takes longer that way. But yeah, no problem if you mess it up. But I believe it's 4-digit we're looking for.
And then the other question is a little bit more general. It's an overarching question, but I want you to answer it, Bob, because I think you're going to be able to describe this a little bit better. Jake Jacobson is asking, is this a cellular communicator?
Yes, it is a cellular communicator. So it does sell, and that's why I said this was more of a commissioning, so I apologize. I didn't really go over all the features, and I probably should have started there, right? So it is a cellular communicator, and it's dual path. So it does cell and or LAN, right? So you can have LAN primary with cell backup. You could have cell primary with LAN backup, or you could do sole path cell. And so, you can configure that. We'll see when we go to configure the unit. I'm going to set it up as sole path cell. And I'd say 95% of what I'm seeing come in is sole path cell. There are a couple that have done dual path with LAN, but most people seem to be using sole path cell. And I'll show you when we configure how that's done. Anything else, James?
No, in terms of questions, that's all that we have currently. One thing I did want to point out to you guys again, like Bob had said, this will be available on the website. We are recording this, and it will be available on our training video section. I did put a link to Bob's current set of videos. There's 7 videos. I put a link to that in the chat. And when we're done, I will put a link to where this will be found on the webpage. It's going to take me a couple hours to get it up, but I will post a link.
Okay. Okay, so where we are right now, right, we created a potterintellicom.com account, right? And potterintellicom.com, that's where you configure you're going to go in there a lot. Every time you put in a new IntelliCom, that's where you're going to go and get things configured and tell it it's a sole path and give it IP addresses and all those kinds of things. You've added a central station, another one-time event typically, right? You probably use the same central station most of the time. So you added all your central station information. Again, so you're kind of done with that. Once that's done, we don't have to do that again. So then the programming the panel, this is where, you see that feedback loop there. This is the iterative process, right? Where you got to program a panel, which we showed you there. You basically just get the user code and the IntelliCom added. And then you're going to register the IntelliCom, which we're going to do now. And then we're going to then talk about how you view things in IntelliView. But this is right now, we're going to go into registering the IntelliCom. All right, so let me bring that web page over. All right, so I'm going to go to IntelliCom. I'll go ahead and log out so it starts to be. You're going to get to this page. You're going to put in that username and password that you created. You're going to say log in. All right, so yours is going to look slightly different because I could see other things, but I'm going to go to what we call the Potterville account. The Potterville account's our internal account where we do a lot of testing. So yours will look similar to this. It'll tell you a little bit about how many active units you have and all kinds of things like that. Like I said, your central station IP form is always here in the bottom right corner, as well as the price list. So both of those things are sitting there. And then any of your subscribers that you have, I'm not going to go through the whole website, but there's ways to see, you can see all of your subscribers and who's online and who's not. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to the bottom right and say register subscriber. And this is where you'll start with every unit. Now, when the unit is shipped to you, on the box, there is a serial number. There's also a serial number on the unit itself. So if you got rid of the box, no problem. There is a serial number on the unit itself. You'll see it when you open the front door. There's a sticker right near the IP port, and the IP port is on the right-hand side. On the right-hand side of the board is a silver IP port. On the left-hand side is a telephone jack. So typically we're dealing with on the right-hand side with the IP port, and you'll get that serial number. So I know the serial number of this one because I've used it quite a bit. So I put in the serial number, I hit validate. And it's really now at this point just trying to make sure this is actually an IntelliCom unit. So it sees it. Once you get this page, it's like, yep, I know that serial number, it's valid. And now this is pretty basic information. This is customer information. So where are you hooking this thing up? So you put any information in here that you would like to about the account and about the site. And if you have some client account numbers or anything like that, you can enter those. I'm not going to put anything because I don't want to and it's not required. So I go to next step. And now over here on the left, it's asking me, is this a dual path or is this a sole path? I'm going to go with sole path right now. So when I hit sole path, all this really does is it kind of sets up your template. And as a matter of fact, you're going to see some new templates being added. And the reason they're being added is to get them even a little closer to what we think your settings are going to be so that you don't have to make as many changes. Although you'll notice I'm not going to make a ton of changes here to the default. Contact ID is what we support on the IntelliCom unit when it's connected to the Potter panels. I am cell only. And then a lot of this I'm not going to click or even talk about because I'm just really talking about getting things configured. But this is where you go through your self-test, all of your different options, what you want your self-test frequency to be, there are some relays on the board. How do you want them to function? So a lot of that kind of thing. The panel on hook voltage really it doesn't matter since we're not actually connecting to a DAC, so it doesn't matter what you put there. So I'm not changing anything on this page. And so once I get to this next page, this is the more important page, and these two boxes at the top are the ones I see the most problems with. If you're direct connecting to a Potter panel, so that means when I say direct connect, I mean you're taking an Ethernet cable from the IntelliCom straight into our panel that's been configured for an IntelliCom. These settings will work. The only thing you'll have to change is this unsupervised user code. Remember, we in the panel we configured it, and I did configure it for 9876 because I do that a lot. That's the only thing you should have to change. These other default settings are absolutely correct. They will work every time, and so don't change them. What I typically see on sites that are not working is they've clicked this and they've turned this off, and that is just not a valid configuration when you're dealing with a Potter panel. And again, we're doing some work to make some of the words on these screens more clear, and because I do see areas why people have done it, and so we are working on some of the wording and what have you. But for this webinar anyway, this is the default IP address of our panels. If you don't give our panel an IP address, it will default, as probably most of you know, and that is the default. 32,000 is the default port number for our panel. So assuming you didn't change it, which I've never seen anybody change it, that's the port number. So you just change this 9876. This down here, and again, this is going to be reworded. This is the IP address of the IntelliCom unit itself. So the IntelliCom unit itself needs an IP address so that it can communicate with the Potter panel. And again, this will work. If you change it to DHCP and it's a direct connect situation, there is no DHCP server. So it never will get an IP address, and so it won't communicate. So that's why we put it on static IP. Now, some of what I'm saying will change if you're going to be on a LAN, and we can get into more detail on that. But basically, if you're on a LAN, so say you're on the customer's LAN, and they're going to be using not sole path cell, you're doing dual path, then you're going to be working with their IT department, and they'll tell you, okay, your fire panel should be at this IP address, and your IntelliCom should be at this IP address, and you'll have to configure the panel appropriately and configure the IntelliCom appropriately. But in a sole path situation, this works every time, and you should just leave it. Now, when you get down here, this is where you're going to see that it says select your primary IP receiver. Well, if you got your that central station receiver form into us and we got it all approved, you just hit select and you'll see the list of the receivers that you submitted to us with the DNIS. And all the talk I just did about not having zeros, I have zeros in here because it works on our internal system. But typically, like I said, that is not correct. And if I saw it, I would be like, I wonder if they're having trouble, and I might contact you. And if you had a backup IP receiver, you can put that there. You can have a phone backup. That's fine. Actually, we have some sites that are using phone only, but I'm going to say this is IP only, so no phone numbers, and I need a central station account number. And this is why I said in the configuration tool, we're going to remove that account number because you're putting it in here anyway. So you'll see that change in the tool, be a slight change. But that's all that's done on this page. But again, this is the area of the most mistakes that I see. It's this page right here. So I will go to next step. And again, some more options about how you want supervision done, whether you're using 5-minute, 60-minute, whatever settings you need. I know on some people's plans, they'll say, well, what is the difference in price between 5-minute supervision and 60? And the answer is there's no difference in price. Our price is fixed on SolPath at $16.95. So nothing you do in here impacts your pricing. And then I will go and say next step. In your case, it's either going to say sole path or dual path, and I know this is redundant. Just choose the right one. In my case, I am a demo, and you won't see that there, but I'm going to hit next step. At this point, I'm gonna take questions in a minute because I want to give this thing time to register. But these are all the settings we made, and again, these two are the most important thing. Everything else, I guess that and probably your central station set up correctly. The rest of the things I almost usually don't even look too much at if I'm looking at somebody's account. So now I'm going to say register subscriber. You should get a green check mark on your page. So there's the green that has been registered. Now, this is where everything's been saved, so you're completely configured. You'll see that this is the unit up top here. It's yellow because it's still not active. I did power my unit down before we got on the call, and so I'm going to power it up and then take some questions because it takes it a few minutes to actually register with the panel. The other thing I'll tell you is if your panel's configured correctly, when there's no IntelliCom there, if you configured it for an IntelliCom, the front of the panel will say IntelliCom missing because it isn't registered, it's not communicating with it, so the panel knows that there should be an IntelliCom talking to it, and there's not. So right now mine says IntelliCom missing, and I'm going to plug it in, and then I'm going to take some questions, James.
All right, first one is there's a couple of these that are tied together, and we can kind of wrap them all up. Abdullah asked, from a price standpoint, how would this compete with Honeywell CSS and Starlink? He's saying it costs more, which I don't think we're going to disagree with that it costs more. Tied to that, there were a couple of other comments that were in that I think you might want to address, one of which is that the Honeywell CLSS is not UL listed for fire alarm. And the UL auditor explained that to Jake Jacobson and their company. So would you like to address the price between us and some of those other communicators, as well as some of the advantages that go with that, as well as UL listing? And then there's a couple other questions.
Yeah, so yeah, from a pricing standpoint, yes, we do know what the pricing is on things like NAPCO, M2M, Telguard, and we know that in some cases, we're higher on the hardware and even on the cellular charge. So we are a couple of dollars higher on the cellular charge and even on the hardware. And I know NAPCO has some programs where they give you rebates and such. And so yeah, we are aware of that. I think on the CLSS side, the limited I do know about it. I know it's a pretty pricey endeavor. I don't know the exact pricing. I do believe that they're higher than us. So where we are different and where even CLSS is different is from, say, a NAPCO or from an M2M or what have you, is that we're having these services. Now, what differentiates us further from CLSS is all the services that I'm going to show you, or at least briefly show you today, is we don't charge extra for the services. So once you buy the IntelliCom, all the push notifications and app access and backing up your panel and all the things we're doing, we have a test and inspect tool. Those things come with your IntelliCom. We do not charge extra for those things. So that separates us from CLSS. That being said, I know CLSS has similar functions. Don't know them all in detail, but I know they do some of those things. Whereas NAPCO and others who are tapping into your DACT have just a more difficult time of getting the kind of data they need to do the services. They're getting the right data for central station, but not for services. The one other thing I'll add from a pricing standpoint, and this will help, and I know it might not put you at the NAPCO level, but with the IntelliCom, when you buy a Potter panel, you do not need to buy a UD2000. So I know that's around a $60-ish item. So when you're doing your math, you can at least say, well, there's $60 I don't have to spend. But we are aware where the pricing is. We understand, price matters, and we think we're adding good value for what we're offering.
All right, and just I want to stop a conversation we're currently having in the chat. Guys, we're not here to discuss the CLSS device. whether it is or is not UL listed. You can feel free to do that research on your own, but we're not going to discuss another manufacturer's product here. So I just want to go ahead and quell that. A couple other questions. Asked if you were going to go over the IntelliView app, and I do not believe that is really a part of your presentation. I know you're going to touch on it, but I don't think you're going to go too terribly in depth. I could be wrong on that. So I'll let you address that. And then another question that's been asked several times over the last couple of months is, can you upload, retrieve history detector status reports via the IntelliCom? So I'll let you tackle those two, Bob.
Okay, I do need to do one thing. I need to get my power right on my unit. Okay. When you do register the IntelliCom, and they do take a few minutes to register. I'm just kind of having some power issues in my office, of course, during a demo. But what you'll end up seeing, what you want to see in your IntelliCom account is you want to see it turn green, right? So it'll be in a yellow state for a period of time. You want to see it turn green so that you know that it's been activated. And I think, yeah, it does say active there, as opposed to this one says pending activation. So I'm not sure if this one's going to activate or not in my office because of the power issue I'm having, but maybe it's about to do it. I'm not sure. So at this point, you're done, right? Once this thing turns green, this thing should be talking to the central station. You can run some test events through your unit. I will send one through here just to make sure. I'm still having some issues. It's not connected yet. Okay, but that's okay because I can show you the rest as we're going through. But this is where you'll see all the units. A lot of these I've had, you can see I've at different times had the same unit hooked up, and I deactivated it and redid it for demos and such. But really, that's the end of that portion, the unit being registered. So now it's talking to the central station. Events should be going through the central station. You can run tests to make sure of that and work with your central station on that. Now, the next thing for us would be if you want to use IntelliView. Now, you don't have to use IntelliView. So if you don't want to use IntelliView, you don't want to use any of the services, that's fine. You could stop right there and you're done. If you do want to use IntelliView, then we'll kind of go over that, how that's going to work. So the first thing we're going to go to Potter yeah, that's the wrong one. That's the IntelliCom. I don't need that. The slide's out of order. Okay. So we need to create an IntelliView account. So we're going to go to potterintelliView.com. Let me bring up that website. All right. So here's IntelliView. Okay. So you're going to go to potterintelliView.com. We will be adding a note to this site for the information I'm about to tell you, but most of you, if you're an IPA dealer, have a Potter Link account. That Potter Link username and password will work in IntelliView, so you don't need to register. You just need to log in. Now, the first time you log in, we may ask you a couple questions, and it's very brief. I can't remember exactly what's on the form, but it's very brief. But you do have an account. So you'll just hit the login and you'll put in your Potter Link username and password. No, that's the wrong one. Let me log out. Okay, I have two different accounts. So here we go. Okay, so when I log in, so this is IntelliView. So you'll see I have a number of sites. Some are up and running, some are not. But this is where you're going to see all of your locations and then eventually all of your IntelliComs. So on this unit here, what I want to show you here is, and this one's still configuring like I told you, but what happens in here is when you first get here, you'll have no locations. So these are really just locations. And really under a location, you'll have panels. So like, say at Home Depot, you might have 5 panels. They could all show up under that location. That's the structure of IntelliView. But the unit will say we just added. What will happen is you would come in here, and the first thing you do is come under settings, and you want to link your IntelliView count to IntelliCom. And what you do there is you come under account settings, and you'll see under here it says user information. It wants to just know your Potter IntelliCom username. Typically, it is your your email address, and so you just put in your email address here, and it'll say the IntelliCom count is linked, and so that links IntelliView to IntelliCom. So now we know what your account is and how to access the panels that you've added. So if I come over here to registered device, what will happen here, this is where I now want to see the panel that I just configured. And so what you do is you come in here, and I'm not going to have any because there's none to register, even the one that I just did for you. But you come in here and you say, add an IntelliCom Advanced Gateway. Once you do that, all of the IntelliCom devices that you have pending that are not in IntelliView will show up here, and you can add them. Once you do that, once you add them in, they will show up in IntelliView. It generally takes it about, once you do the addition, it takes it about 10 minutes for the IntelliCom to show up inside IntelliView. And what will happen is you'll see, like say I added one to Home Depot, I would go to Home Depot and eventually a new panel would just show up here. Like I said, it takes about 10 minutes. So that's the process of getting IntelliCom and IntelliView linked to each other. Now, without going through all the configurations of IntelliView, IntelliView is built for you and for your customers. So within IntelliView, you have the capability to add users. So you as the dealer will see all of your accounts, right? So I could have Home Depot, Lowe's, the University of Louisville. I could have all these locations with all these panels, but I can then add users where those users can only see certain panels, right? So I want the Home Depot people to see Home Depot. I want the, University of Louisville people to see University of Louisville, what have you. So it is built for you and for your customers so that they can have the app. And again, there's no cost to users. Everything is paid for by your cellular charges that you're paying. So if I do show you some of the features in IntelliCom, once you do have a panel, this panel happens to be in our lab here. It will show you an event counter, right? So right off the bat, you say, okay, this one panel at Home Depot has an alarm, a supervisory, and someone silenced it. But then I can dig in even further, and then I can start seeing details about what's going on. So I know there's a fire alarm, and all of the pertinent information about that device are here. Now, when you're on a cell phone, it's going to look like this. It's a matter of fact, it's just a switched down version, right? So even on your cell phone, it's the same user experience, the same look, but all the information is here. I'm going to stay in the browser view just since we have the bigger screen. I could also look at the history of the panel. So here's all of the history of what's been going on. This panel has really just been, sitting, all weekend, what have you. So periodic tests have been happening on that panel. There are some filters. So if you want to filter, just want to see your alarms or, just want to see your supervisories, you can do some filtering. Detail is a read status function, essentially. So I can go into the built-in SLC, and there is one photo heat on this panel. It's a demo unit that we take out in the field. I can click on that photo heat detector, and I can see all of the settings, right? So I can see all of its day and night sensitivity. I can see if it's had any drift, and then further down, even the temperatures on that heat, on the heat sensor. So anyway, it's a big read status capability is what details is. Let me go back. Let me go back in there. The other thing that we have is a test and inspect function. So if you come into tests, this allows you to run tests on your panel, and it's a really like a test and inspect software, except we stop short of creating any kind of NFPA 72 reports or doing high levels of formatting or anything like that. Essentially what we do is if I hit create new test and I give it a test name, so I'm going to give it a test name, it creates a test session. And what happens with this test session is that as events are coming in, we basically latch them in. So I'm going to run into the other room and show you how that's going to work. But you'll see new events coming in here. And basically the idea is that as you're going around the building, and you can have your phone with you showing you this information as you're doing the test, all of the events will be latching in here so that you know you tested them. And then there's a couple of options for verifying that it passed visual test and what have you. The other thing you'll see in here is we have the complete list of devices on that panel, which this is a very small panel, admittedly, but I can even manually test them. So we haven't built this process or locked you into anything. So if you say, well, I did do a visual test on that detector, you'll see when I come back here into results, it's now in there. And I can even say, well, I didn't do a functional, but I did do an overall result. And so that one's in your test session. The other thing you'll see is that whether the test is active or not. If the test is active, then as events come into the panel, they'll show up in this list. If the test is not active, then it'll stop latching events in here. And so the reason we put that in there is if you do a test during the day, you go home for the night and are going to resume in the morning, you can turn it off for the night and then come back in the next day and turn it back on. So this is the way that kind of works. So Jane, maybe you could take a question or two, and they can be watching their screen. I'm going to send in an event or two just so they see the events come into the test session.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so the one that kind of stands back here, and I think this is a very easy question to answer, is Mark Shearman asked, do we have a standard price or is there a data rate per account? In other words, are they going to be charged by the amount of information they send on a monthly basis, or is there a flat rate?
Okay, I'm back. So you saw a number of events come in for that test session, and by default we passed all of those, all the tests, but you can turn them, if you say, well, it really doesn't pass the visual, somebody painted something or what have you, you can do that. So you can have total control over these, or you could say, NA, I'm not even commenting on it. So just these things just toggle. If you want to take something out of the test, that's what this trash can is here for. So you say, well, I want to take out this lumber aisle thing. So I can say, yeah, remove this from the test. So that one's gone. So you have complete control over this. One thing that is being added, you'll probably see in the month of February, there's going to be a new icon here that looks like it's basically going to allow you to add comments. So you'll be able to click on it and put in a comment about that device. So the reason you do that is eventually you're going to download a CSV file. This is kind of where we end, right? So our idea is that you can take this report and you can format it if you want, but then you could add it to your NFPA reports for doing a test. But if I say download a CSV, you'll see it does do it creates a file, and this is the file right here. So let me open that up. So all the information that you put in there at every point will be in this file. And again, you can need to get these opened up a little bit so you can read them. But you can see that all the information is in here, including all of the information you put in about whether the point passed or failed or what have you. So this way you have a record of that. And then it also documents the signal time and date. So we tell you what the time and date was of the signal that we received. if you manually put it in there, we won't put in a time and a date for that. And the other thing we won't do is right now we'll say that, hey, we got a supervisory event, a fire alarm, a silence, whatever we got from the panel, we'll put in here. If you manually did it, it would be blank. But again, you can do whatever you want, and then you could format this obviously to your liking. But that's the test and inspect function. So let me close that down. All right. And I think, let me get this out of here. All right. This was the IntelliView screens that come up if when you join IntelliView, you would get a username and password. But if you already have a PotterLink account, you're not going to experience this because you already have your PotterLink username and password. But if you didn't and you needed to create an account, this is kind of the very similar process to Potter and Telecom, right? Put in some information and then go ahead and activate your account. As a matter of fact, your customers, as you add users to the system, they may not have an IntelliView account, right? So if you had a Home Depot as your customer, one of the users said, hey, I'd like to be able to see the events, they would this would be their experience. They'd have to register and get themselves an account, but everybody will be approved. They just basically setting up a username and password, and then it's added to your account, so then you can control what they can see and what they can't see. So really, that's the overview of setting up an IntelliCom. And again, it took us better part of an hour to go through this. But when you're setting up an IntelliCom, really the main process of just putting in the serial number, putting in some basic information, and hitting register, that IntelliCom is up and running. And so I had a customer I talked to the other day, he said he could literally do it in 5 minutes. So, I mean, if you have, once you do it a few times, it's obviously, goes a lot better than, your first time. So, and again, we're here to, if you need to reach out to us to help you through the first one, we're more than happy to do that.
All right, Bob, real quick, we do have a couple of questions. The one was, is our monthly subscription price a flat rate, or does it have to do with data usage per account? So I'll let you answer that one first.
Yep. So yes, it is a flat rate. It doesn't have anything to do with data usage. The only charge that I'm aware of that's extra is if we can't reach your central station via IP, and so we have to use a non-toll-free number, then I believe it's 10 cents per call. I don't see that happen very often. I think we had like one account last month that had to do that, and I don't know if their IP receiver went down or what happened, but that's the only extra charge, right? But no, the data of us backing up panels or you remotely programming or all that kind of stuff, it's included in the $16.95 sole path, or I think if it's dual path, I think it's $11.95, whatever the price list said. But yeah, it's all included. No.
Tied to that question is, do we charge for excessive runaway signals? There are several other radio companies that do so that's been a question I've been asked several times. If we have a panel that's an excessive runaway, is there going to be additional charges?
No, we don't have a bill for excessive runaway signals. We do monitor for that, and if we see it, right, we contact you and get this thing shut down as soon as we can, or get this thing rectified. That's why we're getting runaway signals. But no, there's no charge for runaway signals.
Okay, so excellent. One of the other questions, I'm going to kind of put this together because I think they go hand in hand. Is there can we currently, or is there any plans in the future to be able to retrieve history and detector status from the IntelliCom unit? And is there any expectation that we will be able to, through IntelliView, be able to export filled out NFPA inspection forms, since we have all of that information available?
Yeah, so on the NFPA inspection forms, no, there's no plan for us to get into the test and inspect business in that way. We will continue to add, I'm going to call them, I'll say minor features, like we're adding, like I said, that comment field. But at this time, we have really no interest in getting into the test and inspect business in a full way. It's a very complicated, it gets very complicated very quickly, because as you look at different jurisdictions, everybody seems to have a different form that they like or think is the standard. We do have discussions going on with some of the test and inspection companies that I can't really talk about right now, where we may do some integration with them and allow them to have access to the data that's coming through, so that it can kind of automate their tool and let them do all the NFPA test and inspection forms. So if you have ideas or companies you think we should be talking to, be more than happy to hear that, because it will play a role. Now we may or may not really choose a winner in this either. We may go and integrate with several of these test and inspection companies, because we want to offer you more services, and that's not our business anyway. So to us, if we can do some integration, it's a bonus to you, and we have the data. So anyway, that's our approach right now. But no, we're not working on any NFPA forms or any of that.
How about the
ability? I think you asked about the read status.
To pull those reports, the status or history.
I mean, we do have the history. The history that we get in IntelliView is the history of all of the events that are coming to us from the panel, which substantially matches the history in the panel. But I can't tell you that it's the exact same history file. It is separate. We have had a couple of requests for us to go and grab the exact history from the panel. So we're considering that. And then I think the other one was more around read status, and that was more what I kind of showed earlier. I can see the configuration of any point on the panel from IntelliView. And then, of course, I can make changes with my programming tool that if it's connected to IntelliView, I can make changes.
I think the main question that's being asked is that exportable detector sensitivity report that you can get directly from the panel, because NFPA in their test and inspect section says that we can use those sensitivity reports if the panel is configured to do those. And so what they're saying is it would be nice for them to be able to remotely pull that sensitivity report from the panel in that Excel form through the IntelliCom.
Right. So. We're looking at doing some of that in IntelliView. You do have some of those reports within the programming tool itself. So there is a sensitivity report within the programming tool itself, so you could use that. But yes, things like that we are looking at adding. You will see IntelliView continue to add services. There's no question. That's our commitment to this product, is continue to add services that are included as part of your cell charges. So to that point, we're also looking for ideas. And I can say that, in January, actually, we got the idea from a customer, said, hey, could you just add a comment field to your test and inspect? And so it's being added. It should be in by the end of February. So we definitely are listening. We have ideas internally, but they get a little bit more speed behind them when customers say, this is what I would like. And then they actually get to the forefront and they actually get done.
Gotcha. And then the one last question that was asked is a little bit more technically oriented, and I'll go ahead and handle that. Abdella asked, does this device hook directly to the panel, or can it go on a network? And just so you know, this device is meant to hook directly to the panel. It's the point of it. We would use it just like any other cellular communicator. We can use a Cat5 cable, give it 24 volts, and it can be used as sole path. However, if your AHJ does require dual path, you can buy the NCE 1000 card, our network card, and then you could have local customer internet for that IP reporting. You could use the IntelliCom as a primary or secondary source. Of course, you could use the UD2000 as well and do phone lines. I don't think anybody's really doing that anymore. But so the IntelliCom device itself does not go on the network. It'll go on to that network card, which of course you would provide local internet to, so you could have that dual reporting capability. So I did want to address that. Other than that, another question.
Go ahead,
Bob. Sorry.
Oh, I did see someone asked about uploading the panel program through the IntelliCom, and the answer is yes. We upload programs through the IntelliCom. And you see, I mentioned earlier in the programming tool, open up in the right-hand corner, that's the IntelliCom logo. And this is where you would, when I click on this, well, I can log out, but when you would log in, and basically it links your programming tool to IntelliCom. And so what ends up happening in the tool is, even if I do like a file open, everybody's used to having their local files, right? So your programming's on their hard disk somewhere, what have you. But now there's an IntelliView button, and so it sees all of your panels, right? So that Home Depot panel we've been looking at, there's the Home Depot panel. It last backed it up on January 26th, and you can open it right from here. So I could just hit OK, and then it goes out to the panel through the IntelliCom, through Sol Pass Cell, and opens up that file. And so I think there's like one, that smoke heat, that heat detector, there it is. There was that lumber yard heat detector, lumber aisle. So there's the program. And then I can send it back to the panel. As long as the panel is enabled for downloads, I can now send this back to the panel. So if I do download to panel, it's going to say, I click IntelliView IntelliCom, meaning I want to send this back to the panel. Now, when I hit OK here, you're going to see down the bottom, it's trying to download it to the panel, but the panel is in the other room, and I didn't configure it for downloads, and that's why it says panel not enabled. So it's telling you to use the data transfer menu in the panel to enable it for downloads. But yes, we will download across the network, across the cellular connection.
I think that's one of the best selling points of this device, is that ability to retrieve that program from the cloud, as well as do that remote programming. And just to reemphasize again, NFPA says that if we make programming changes, that we have to test those changes. So that's why we're going to require on somebody on site to touch that keypad or that annunciator to enable that remote access, because we need to prove that there's somebody actually on site. So all that being said, I think we've addressed all the questions. I don't see anything that we haven't touched in here. One question I do want to go ahead and throw out there is, it was asked if there's any CEUs tied to this webinar. The answer to that is no, there's not technically any CEUs, but this will fall under NICET's additional education, where they talk about informal courses, workshops, seminars, etc. So you will get credit there. What I generally recommend to people is you should have gotten a registration email when you signed up for this. Save that email, and you can print it off as a PDF. And when you go to add that to NICET, that generally satisfies them for those couple of contact hours that you would get from this class. All that being said, what version of programmer is required? That's going to be version 10 point. Is it 03, Bob? Do you have to have the newest version, or is it just 10 point that you're going to require?
Yeah, just go to the newest version. Let me see, where did I have that here? Programming tool 10.3.95 or higher. I think that's the current release, but
yeah, 95 is the most current. Yes.
Is it? Yeah. And I think, and then the neat thing about, once we went into, like, I think it was version 10, as we do new releases of the programming tool, when you start up your programming tool, if there is a new release, it tells you. So you don't, it used to be you basically had to poll us, right? You had to go to our website and see if there was a new tool and then download it. Now, you know, when you start our programming tool, if there's a new version, it comes up and says, hey, there's a new version, would you like to install it? And I highly recommend you do. I understand when you're in the middle of working on something, the last thing you want to do is upgrade, but I can guarantee you the upgrade probably takes a minute. You know, I mean, it probably takes a minute or two at tops. And so I would suggest you continue to stay there. There are a lot of changes in the tool going on. Nothing where the UIs change, and we're not getting into all that, but new features. We have new device types, new functions being added to the panel. So I definitely think you should upgrade as we upgrade.
Well, and I couldn't agree more with that. We definitely want to keep, guys, keep in mind, and I'm sure most of you understand this, this is software-based programming, so it is obviously advised to keep that software up to date. There's a whole different conversation we can have about firmware, but like it shows here on the screen, we do need the most recent version of firmware, 10.03, is the firmware you're gonna need on your control panels. And what I recommend when I'm teaching classes is, first thing you should do with a new panel out of the box is put an appliance cord on it, update the firmware immediately. And then after that, I take a kind of, if it's not broke, don't fix it mentality. But to get this IntelliCom functionality, you will need that 10.03 firmware. That being said, are there any other questions from the group at large about IntelliCom or IntelliView? If so, we can go ahead and take those now. We'll go ahead and hang tight for a couple of minutes, see if anybody has any questions to creep up, and if not, we'll go ahead and end the session. Once again, I want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to thank Bob Tata for presenting. Once again, Bob is a wealth of information on this device, and I know there's been some questions about commissioning, but I think when it's all said and done, this IntelliCom Advanced Gateway really does sell itself. It offers a lot of functionality to you guys. Everybody that I have seen that has implemented these in the field has absolutely loved them. So if there's any questions, feel free to go ahead and throw them in the chat box now. All right, I see quite a few people dropping off. Oh, good question, Mark. I'm going to go ahead and you got me right in time. I was just getting ready to end the session. Did you say always use static IP? From where I'm standing, I'm going to highly recommend always using a static IP when you're using this device. That is my personal opinion. Would you agree with that, Bob?
Yeah, in SolPath, when you're not on a network, you have to use static IP. And then I agree, even on a network, rather than relying on a DHCP server, just give the unit static IP.
I mean, let's be honest here. When we start talking about networking, in my opinion, whether we're talking about fire alarms, IP cameras, or whatnot, when we're dealing with security type things, I think static IP is the best way to go. It's going to make your life easier for serviceability going down the road, etc. I could wax poetic about that for 20 minutes if you allow me to, but I'm not going to. The short answer, Mark, is going to be yes. Always use static IP. You have to on SolPath, but we're going to recommend it in every application.
Yeah.
Any other questions, guys? All right, I'm not seeing anything coming in. So with that being said, I want to once again thank Bob Tata for presenting. This has been a great wealth of information on our IntelliCom Advanced Gateway. I'd like to thank all of you for joining. And this session has been recorded, so I will have it posted on the website, hopefully this afternoon, but definitely as soon as possible. And once again, I want to thank you guys all for supporting Potter. Have a great day.
For additional questions about the Potter product, please contact technical support at the phone number or email address shown on the screen. And as always, don't forget to follow us on social media.